specifically the one theme that's been trending widely. What is the mantra behind the success of film Sayyara? There are several other controversies which have once again brought a lot of limelight to some of these bold PR strategies. What does this really mean for the overall change in pattern around PR, around brand intelligence? We will decode this with two very special voices joining us on the broadcast. And let's not forget, Saturday was World Sanskrit Day. So in this edition of The Breakfast Club, we will also be going across to someone who has researched deeply on decoding the Indus script, someone who's closely associated with the language and plans to take that entire movement forward on this edition of The Breakfast Club. First up, the top headlines. Inside the playbook of modern PR, we will talk about India's PR industry and how it races to catch the next trend, how brands are turning moments into milestones. Creativity and timing, that's all it takes. This is what's taken center stage in PR wars. We will be decoding PR's new currency and what's trending. Speaking of World Sanskrit Day, there are those who are using Sanskrit to unlock an ancient mystery. We will take you to the man who's decoded the Indus script through his research, Yagnadevam, on the power and logic of Sanskrit and reading the Indus Valley in this very language. And then we move on to MG Cyberster review, the speed and style that's been unleashed in the latest Roadster like no other. Is that true? MG Cyberster's acceleration is anywhere between 0 to 100 km/h in just 3.2 seconds. So the verdict coming up next on The Breakfast Club. And as promised, today on The Breakfast Club, we're digging into a simple yet crucial question. How has PR really changed over the years? This conversation has gained momentum in the backdrop of a few successes and a few face-saving moves centered around films and brands alike. We deep dive into two such very contrasting stories. One is Bollywood film Sayyara, without the usual trailers, without the usual pre-release promotions or interviews or star frenzy. It sparked an emotional buzz. We saw real couples crying, and this went viral across social feeds. Subtle hints dropped by director and still managed to turn into a blockbuster. There's also the astronomer scandal, a Coldplay concert kiss cam moment that went viral. The company sidestepped the fallout with tongue-in-cheek video featuring a familiar face. Clever, unexpected PR under pressure. Let's take some more examples. Let's talk about Rajasthan tourism and how it has more than doubled domestic travel in the last 2 years alone. Why and how? They've done this by removing the concept of dusty brochures and going for meme-styled reels full of local flavor, which includes humor, emojis, relatable storytelling. It's doubled the footfall from 10.8 crore to 23.2 crore rupees. Why are we giving you this example? It's because of the fact that genuine content and not ad blitzes always win. In other words, PR now often skips the spectacle. It's fast, it's real, creative, relatable and rooted in culture. And also about how smart or human the voice sounds. To help us understand, make sense of this changing pattern, we're joined by Dilip Cherian, image guru, the person who has revolutionized how organizations and individuals present themselves to the world. With him, we have Pallavi Priyadarshini, founder of All See, who brings a sharp, story-first perspective across film, corporate and emerging media. Very good morning to both of you. Thank you for joining us on this edition of The Breakfast Club. Mr. Cherian, let's start with you. You carry an experience which is unmatched. So tell us about this changing pattern. We've given 2-3 examples. Do you want to start with Sayyara and what it's done, why we've seen this kind of an overwhelming response on social media? And to those who are still wondering whether this was a PR gimmick, what would you say?
That's a good question. And I think that the comparison between what's being done with Sayyara and what Astronaut tried to do with itself is a worthwhile starting point. The whole emphasis is on what I call contemporary thinking outside the box. And I think that successful agencies and consultants always help corporations and products like a film try to achieve the end objective. And without that, there's no success. It's whether you achieve the end objective or not. And if you are able to achieve the end objective by disrupting the way things are in a particular sector, it's good. So Sayara has done that by keeping a lot of stuff under wraps, only releasing as the movie opened out, and trying to make sure that the curiosity factor and the beyond the class A towns audiences erupted with enthusiasm for the product being the film. On the other side, you had Astronaut, which had a huge controversy and then changed that with a touch of humor. Humor was present even in the Sayara approach to film marketing. And I think Armstrong, that whole episode, that astronomer turned into an advantage for itself with one move, actually made the cut as far as global PR wars is concerned. I'll stop here for now.
That's as far as PR argument is concerned. There's so much that's blown up after the entire move that was made by Astronomer and really bringing in Chris Martin's ex-wife. There are those who are calling it
That's
cunning.
what I was referring to.
Yeah. So we'll go to that, Mr. Cherian. But Pallavi, to you now, tell us a little bit about this change in pattern that we're witnessing. How much of a role does hype, perception, all of this that we've seen on social media around the film Sayara play in making it the kind of success that it's seen? Also, let's not forget that this is very similar to the 1990s trend when new actors, new faces were actually introduced through movies and not Instagram stories.
Thank you so much, Prithvi. Actually, this is definitely, it's a very interesting question because, and I'm glad that we are talking this today because in the era of noise, silence is a strategy as well. And that's very, very critical. People often mistake PR with publicity with the idea because we just look at short-term gains, but we are not really focused on the brand reputation, which is a long-term driven. And that's the reason there should be a science behind the way we really drive this art. So that's what I strongly feel about the way the Sayara strategy has worked. And that's where it's glad that we understand now that even we need not be a noise all the time.
Okay, Mr. Cherian, there are those who say that don't mistake this for organic success because you've ended up cheating people in a way. You've tried to create this whole perception around people literally sitting with IV drips in the theater. There are couples who are hugging it out, crying their lungs out. This is really not an organic response to the film. How would you respond to that kind of criticism?
You know, the difference in products is what is very important. For a film like Sayara, the box office receipts in the first week, in a sense, set the tone for what happens in week 2 and 3. What happens in Delhi versus Coimbatore. What happens in Calcutta versus Chittagong. Meaning, that's the whole play. So it doesn't matter because that product has a reasonably tiny mind space as well as lifespan. The difference is in the kind of thing that Astronomer does, because if a corporate which is listed needs to survive, it needs a strategy which circumvents the danger of the moment and replaces it with the opportunity of the future. And that is all is reflected in Q1, Q2, Q3 results kind of stuff. So there is no getting away from the fact that Sayara can afford to do this kind of thing, which is, as you paraphrase, overhyping the moment and actually putting in non-truthful responses. And I think that it just was attention grabbing in a different way. So they kept the secret till the launch, and then they did playful stuff with it, which is on the edge of being unnatural and untruthful, but it works because what the index of measure is week one's receipts. And if that works, the rest goes on momentum. But astronomer doesn't have that choice.
Yeah.
It's a longer run company and it has to play the longer game.
So it's essentially what astronomers done very, very tactfully is it's turned negative attention to brand awareness, which I think was a do or die, a battle for survival kind of a situation that it found itself in. Mr. Charan, I'll come back to you in just a bit. Pallavi, speaking of Sayyara a little bit, and since you deal with people who are going about really revisiting their strategy into how or what is going to finally make the cut, what's going to finally be declared successful, there are those who also argued, including the crew, the filmmakers associated with the film, that it's not all but fluff. The music did wonders, the storyline was powerful and emotional. So there was a little bit of a relativity that really came into play, and that's why it became successful too. Coupled with the kind of PR, the kind of marketing that the entire team perhaps went ahead with, it was just a 2+2, isn't it? What are your thoughts there?
Yes, definitely. So that's where, as Kritvik, I just now mentioned that you have to have content, right? There is a content, but how you push through it is equally very, very important. And that's where I said that if we like Sayyara's approach is like not showing all your cards in a poker game, and you create intrigue, you make people lean in. They had a good storyline. We can't say that actors were not good, or without that it would have not been possible. But then how do we really bring it to the people? That's very important. Because what is seen is what can be heard, and what is heard needs to be seen as well. So it helped create intrigue, and you were able to make people lean in there. And while Saturation's campaign can work, they also risk audience fatigue. And this is basically the film's success demonstrate that a strategic approach is focused on emotional connection and organic buzz really is very, very effective.
So if this is repeated with every film going forward, perhaps it's not going to do or create the same magic,
Yes.
right?
No, not necessarily. You have to really understand the audience. You can't just, you have to it's the Indian audience there is so much cultural nuances that are layered in Indian context. Sensitivity runs high, and you need to know your audience intimately. Without that, it cannot work. For example, the Zomato has pulled off this beautiful fast. They're cheeky, timely tweet because they understand the pulse of urban millennials. The Chandra flyer, it came up with a very nice, interesting tweet, which had both the, it has a right balance, empathy, which you can't, by being funny, you have to be very, very human at the same time.
Yeah.
So you have to have the right balance there.
Okay, fan engagement is something that you spoke of, which is very interesting in itself. It's not just films that are trying to attempt it. Mr. Cheryan, brands have done it for years at length. Let's take the example of Red Bull, for instance. Let's take the example of the AXL challenge. You have an ice bucket water challenge, which literally the entire world is replicating, and you've generated so much funds through this one challenge. So how much of a role does fan engagement really, play in this entire exercise? And has that pattern also shifted? Have we seen different kind of or different levels of fan engagement now taking place or being adopted?
Terrific question. The secret sauce today is turning those who are either laggards or bold into fans. Because everybody is being pounded with an excess of stuff, fans are privy because the organizations have their social media handles and they bombard them with stuff. The idea is to convert those who are indifferent into fans and then retain those fans. Whether you talk about the ice bucket challenge or whether you talk about what Rajasthan is doing today.
Yeah.
The advantage Rajasthan has is that you have a young minister who's willing to allow agencies to take a risk with memes and stuff like that. So, in the campaigns that we run, in the campaigns that I advise on, I find that it is equally the willingness of the customer or the client to take the risk. Audiences are constantly shifting. So the second thing you need besides a willing client is insights into how contemporary audiences are reacting fast. And what Gwyneth Paltrow did with Astronomer is an example of being quick, but knowing that there's only one measure, which is your brand and its longevity. So fans can come and go, but you need to make sure that there's enough churn to ensure that you retain that state of growth, which is what you want to be in. That's what we advise clients on. When I talk to large corporations or to political entities, the idea is that you know that you have a starting base. You know that you have a stable base in Bangalore. But what you want to do is grab eyeballs in Baroda. How do you do that?
Yeah.
And how do you make sure that those people are not bored by overexposure, but that you turn over a new trick every now and then to make sure that you get the attention that you need?
It's almost as if you've had the Gen Z's attention, you've had the entire nation's attention. I think it's largely come down to that, Mr. Cherian. But what should one not do in terms of, a great PR strategy? Would you then say, for instance, on top of my head, if I recall one, Tata Nano, calling it a cheap car, I don't think, quite frankly, did wonders.
I think that's a very good example of not workshopping it enough. You need to have the data on how your customers or your potential customers are going to react to words and phrases. The second thesis that I usually work with is don't try humor on your own. Leave it to experts who can actually play humor and fine tune it so that you don't get trapped in controversy. There is a danger of attempting to do the facile and then falling flat on your face. When I usually work with largish customers, I tell them leave humor to the expert. That is the creator who knows how to handle humor and which you then test very quickly. Speed is sometimes the biggest enemy you have. So you've got to wait those extra 2 days to get the Gwyneth Paltrow script ready and make sure you don't use humor. Just use a humorous twist to go back to brand.
Yeah.
The brand is what matters fundamentally.
Absolutely. And I think by mentioning this humorous twist, you're referring to the questions which were put out by Ms. Paltrow. Very, very creatively they crafted that entire video wherein they spoke of what one would think is going to be discussed, but the answer was something that was a surprise element. So great PR strategy there. But thank you, the both of you all. I wish I could take up questions on how AI comes into play in all of this, but we'll leave that for another day. Thank you so much, both of you. Wonderful speaking to you this morning. We head into a very short break, viewers. With that, up next, we're going to talk about the man who's using Sanskrit to unlock an ancient mystery, the man who's decoding the Indus script through his research. Yagnadevam joins us in just a bit on the power and logic of Sanskrit.
Now, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh on Sunday described India's economy as the world's most dashing and dynamic, adding that some who act like everyone's boss are not happy with India's rise. His remarks come amid high tariff imposed by US President Donald Trump on Indian goods. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also stressed that becoming self-reliant in technology is the country's next big priority. Former Trump aide John Bolton warned that these tariffs risk undoing decades of US efforts to pull India away from Russia and China, calling Trump's apparent bias towards China over India as an enormous mistake. Meanwhile, Shashi Tharoor is leading a parliamentary panel briefing on recent developments in India's foreign policy, focusing on US-India trade negotiations and tariffs. The panel includes Commerce and Foreign Secretaries, along with opposition MPs like Abhishek Banerjee, John Britas, Asaduddin Owaisi and Sagarika Ghosh.
दुनिया में सबसे तेजी के साथ मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में आगे बढ़ रहा है बहनों भाइयों, इस हकीकत को सबने स्वीकार कर लिया है। और लोग कहते हैं अंग्रेजी में डैशिंग यानी दबंग, डायनेमिक यानी गतिशील अर्थव्यवस्था विश्व में दुनिया के किसी देश की है तो हमारे और आपके देश भारत की हो गई है मेरे बहनों भाइयों। यह भी हम लोगों के लिए कम गौरव का एक विषय नहीं है। कुछ लोग हैं जो भारत के का विकास जितनी तेजी के साथ हो रहा है उन्हें रास नहीं आ रहा है, उन्हें अच्छा नहीं लग रहा है। सबके बास तो हम हैं, भारत कैसे इतनी तेजी के साथ बढ़ रहा है। और बहुतों के द्वारा यह कोशिश की जा रही है कुछ ऐसा किया जाए ताकि भारत में भारतवासियों के हाथों से जो चीजें तैयार होती हैं वह दुनिया के देशों में जाएं तो उन देशों में बनने वाली चीजों से वह महंगी हो जाएं, ताकि भारत की धरती पर भारतवासियों के हाथों से बनी हुई चीजें जब महंगी हो जाएंगी तो दुनिया के को लोग उसे नहीं खरीदेंगे।
Prime Minister is used to face all these challenges, and our country is Atmanirbhar Bharat. Our country is in a developing mode, so we are self-sufficient to face any difficulties. And another thing, our Honorable Prime Minister has challenged because they want to sacrifice the welfare of our farmers. How can they sacrifice that? Our farmers should be safeguarded. So for that, I am taking the challenge. So he is for our country, he is for our farmers. So we no need to worry. Whatever may be the challenges, our Honorable Prime Minister will face with the support of all the 140 crore people.
जिनको अपना दोस्त माना था, हाउडी मोदी से लेकर काफ़ी सारी रैलीज की थी, आज ये सवाल ज़रूर उठा है हर देशवासी के मन में कि आज हमने इतना अमेरिका पे भरोसा किया, इतना उनकी प्रेसिडेंसी पर भरोसा किया, और अब सबसे ज़्यादा अगर टैरिफ लग रहा है हमारे देश को लग रहा है, सबसे ज़्यादा धमकियाँ आ रही हैं तो हमारे देश को आ रही हैं, सबसे ज़्यादा भाषा का इस्तेमाल हो रहा है तो हमारे खिलाफ हो रहा है। तो अगर जब हमारे अच्छे रिश्ते हैं, इंडिया यूएस के अच्छे स्ट्रॉन्ग स्ट्रेटेजिक रिलेशंस हैं, इकोनॉमिक रिलेशंस हैं, उसको उसमें रोड़ा डालना और इस तरीके की भाषा का इस्तेमाल करना कहाँ तक सही है?
These are all the failures of Commerce Minister like Piyush Goyal, who is misguiding the Indian public, and when 25% tariff comes on it and then additional 25% is the blackmailing politics of Mr. Trump comes. There is no word from Mr. Modi. They are not ready to take the word of Mr. Trump. And they are just saying silent that we will not compromise, we will stand for farmers.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Now, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh on Sunday described India's economy as the world's most dashing and dynamic.
Welcome back. On Saturday, the world marked Sanskrit Day, a celebration of one of the oldest living languages and its influence. We spoke then about its history and its cultural legacy. This morning, we're going to take that conversation forward with someone who is preserving the language and is putting it to work in unexpected ways. Our person of interest this morning, Yagnadevam, is an independent researcher who has spent years using Sanskrit to decode the Indus Valley script, one of history's greatest linguistic mysteries. His journey moves from engineering to cryptography to ancient texts, blending technology with tradition in a way very few have attempted. Good morning, Mr. Yagnadevam. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for taking out the time. You're fondly known for your research in deciphering the Indus script. First up, tell us about your journey, what it's been like.
My journey is similar to most students in India. Essentially, I started learning in middle school, high school, up to 12th grade, and then once I went to engineering, I kind of lost touch. And I rediscovered it a few years ago when I started working on the IndoScript. It was, in the beginning, it takes a little while to catch up, but then it's not that much of an issue to come to any level you want.
We've done so much of Sanskrit on the Breakfast Club lately, Mr. Yagnadevam. In that context, tell us about your association with the language. What was the process of re-teaching yourself the language through your research?
All right. So when during COVID, there was really nothing to do. It was very hard to, I needed something that would occupy my mind and something interesting, something I could do for months, maybe years, because the lockdown looked like it would go on for a long time. And I was looking for a really nice problem, really difficult problem, and I found the IndoScript problem. I read the works that other people have done before, and one of the approaches that I thought could help was a cryptogram approach. This is something that I was doing when I was in college. So I thought either Tamil or Sanskrit, there's a good chance one of them will work. I found a downloadable Sanskrit dictionary. I started with it, and as a part of reading, I had to learn Sanskrit. I also had to learn I had to read about different ancient Vedic texts like the Sri Rudram and so on, just to understand what these names mean that I was reading. So that is how I got into Sanskrit.
Very few people have turned to a language, and in this fashion during COVID days. We've heard so many stories, but this is rare. How did you actually do it, Mr. Yagnadevam? Learning the pronunciation, the grammar right. How did your inner circle then respond to this entire exercise you decided to undertake?
Yeah, so fortunately, a lot of things in Sanskrit are online. One of the earliest dictionaries to be computerized is the Monier-Williams dictionary, and that is downloadable. So that lets me use programming to do all the searches faster. So you have to search in parallel, and you have to do intersections to find the most appropriate values for a given sign. So the dictionary was online, a lot of grammar stuff is online, and most of the works written over 100 years ago is copyright free. It's available, on the internet. So I started reading about those things. Now, most people have some Sanskrit vocabulary because you are from an Indian background, you speak Indian languages, and you will notice that most words are derived from Sanskrit, and you use Sanskritized terms all the time, like you say namaste, for example. You say satyameva jayate. These are all Sanskrit terms. So it is not hard to learn the pronunciation, to understand most of the words. The difficulty is in understanding some deep, rarely used vocabulary and relearning the grammar. So in grammar, the declensions maybe most people will pick up quickly, but the conjugation takes a little bit of time because there are many different ways. And my family has been supportive, and in generally everybody was doing their thing during COVID, so that their mind is occupied and they're not thinking about this disease which could kill you. And so yeah, it was a good break from the drudgery and anxiety of the lockdown.
Using Sanskrit to decode the IndoScript. Now, many would say or wonder while watching you here on the Breakfast Club, the entire process sounds so complicated. So break it down for our viewers. What were your findings? What are the issues that remain still?
My findings, when I started, I had certain ideas about what the script would be like, what the contents would be like, based on my readings and knowledge up to that point in time. So one of the things that I expected was that it would be some kind of very old dialect, like Indo-Iranian or something like that. I was expecting the script to be syllabic, which is to say it is different symbol for ka, ka, ki, ku, and so on. But that is not what it turned out. It turned out the script is Abugida. The language sound like it's readable as Sanskrit. There are still some issues in the sense the historical linguistics people can look at it and they can give answers whether certain sounds were the same, were they differentiated, were they merged, and so on. I don't have the expertise to do that yet. And recently we were able to decipher or read the complete corpus. All unbroken inscriptions have been read, and they have been read in Sanskrit. So one of the questions was there any non-Sanskrit inscriptions? We didn't find any in the Indus Valley sites. We found some in West Asia, and they were in Akkadian or Sumerian. So there is still a lot more research to be done. One of the things we're trying to do is just to have a grammatical analyzer so that you can click on any word and it will tell you the grammatical derivation from the root or from the dictionary. What declension is used, is it Bahuvachana, is it Ekavachana, is it which Vibhakti, and so on.
Wow. And that's why there are many who came out to garner praises at your work, at your research. But there's a little bit of criticism that came your way as well once the paper was published. How did you deal with that?
Right. So the criticisms, they started pretty much as soon as the paper was published. Most issues that keep coming back again and again are the same issues. There are very few new issues. Most issues have been answered. The people who are familiar with Sanskrit, they have certain beliefs about Sanskrit, which are not mathematically true, and they try to, argue with those beliefs. For example, that Sanskrit can read any string, no matter what it is, and that is, generally it's not true. You can just create a random string and you won't be able to read it. There are certain rules in Sanskrit that vowels cannot follow vowels, that it has to become a sandhi. There are certain letters like the vowel, it has to only come between ka and pa. So you can say klipta, but you cannot use that anywhere else. So the constraints of languages exist because the human brain uses language to organize it in a way to minimize the cognitive load. It tries to reduce the number of rules and then use the rules in combination to create billions of words. It is not designed to just remember a whole set of strings and assign values to it. So that is not how language works. Any language works.
When it comes to Sanskrit, we're talking about its mathematical nature. We're talking about how it is really suited for computer science, for AI perhaps in years to come. Is Sanskrit really machine friendly, Mr. Yagnadevam, especially in comparison to others, or is that just a modern myth?
Sanskrit is, compared to other languages, is a little more machine friendly, that is for sure, because the rules are concise. So you have about 2,000 roots and 4,000 rules. Now this is a simplification because there are exceptions to many of these rules. The rules are called sutras. In Panini they have apavada, which is an exception. You have vartika, which is special circumstances and so on. So, but you can learn them. For a machine, it is very easy to remember all of this, okay, and to analyze it because it's essentially like an algorithm. So at least for classical Sanskrit, it is reasonably machine friendly. For Vedic Sanskrit, it's a little more complicated, but not a lot more complicated. So compared to say English, which is very machine unfriendly. But as you know, with the hardware and all these LLMs and so on, the advantages are now really neutralized. Yeah. It doesn't take much more effort to use Sanskrit or English to speak to a machine. But Sanskrit, one of the good things about it is it makes your mind more. It increases your reasoning and your logical way to process language, because the grammar has a lot of richness regarding how to form words, how to create phrases, sentences, especially if you do poetry, if you do the poetry in meter, it helps your brain a lot that I don't think you can get from many other languages.
Okay, so it's great for your brain exercise, basically. Tell us now, what's the most radical use of Sanskrit you've ever come across?
Most work on Sanskrit actually has been cultural. It has been about, there's some AI work being done in some of the IITs. In IIT Hyderabad, I know they have come out with this AI product, and you can speak to it in terms of Indian philosophy, and it will answer and tell you whether this is, this is part of the philosophy or what you should do using this and so on. So that I think is very interesting, because now you're kind of making the whole philosophy, morality, ethics, and so on, an entity that you can interact with. So I think there's a lot of wealth. So the things you can do with AI is essentially, it depends on the literature and the wealth of written information that you can train it with. And in terms of Sanskrit, most of it is in the poetry, the philosophy, and the religious lore and so on. And that is a great place to start, and that's where the startups are working on, which is, I think, wonderful. And as more literature is produced, which is not a lot in Sanskrit today, unfortunately most of it is in English, but as more is produced, more contemporary literature is produced, you will start seeing more interesting applications of Sanskrit in terms of machine learning and AI.
So you've spoken of two sides to Sanskrit. One is the Kadak, strict grammatical framework of Sanskrit, and the other is, of course, the more poetic or the more culturally woven form of Sanskrit, which, of course, is embraced by the country so very well. Would you say Sanskrit then is more algorithmic or more emotional?
First of all, I have to disagree that Sanskrit is not emotional. Sanskrit is a beautiful vehicle to express emotion. If you read any of this Maga, this Shishupala in original or whatever, it is a beautiful language for expressing emotion. But in terms of the structure, in terms of the grammar, what that algorithmic nature does for you is that it increases your ability to express many complex topics in a poetic way. So it's mostly poetic, more poetic than algorithm. Algorithm is a structure, but if you look at all the verses, they're in meter, they use alliterations, they use similes, and that makes your output a lot more intense. So for the reader, it's a very intense emotional, it's very connecting when you read things in Sanskrit.
Okay, also tell us, how does Sanskrit describe consciousness, for instance?
Right, so this wouldn't be Sanskrit, it's mostly the Sanskritic philosophy, the darshanas. And what the darshanas essentially do is, there are different ways of looking at reality. And one way is to say that the, consciousness is and matter are separate, right? Consciousness and matter are separate. They come together in a life, in a jiva, right? So Purusha and Prakriti come together in jiva. That is one way. The other way is to say that consciousness is an emergence, is an emergent phenomenon of matter interacting with itself. So there is matter, and it interacts, like in your brain. There is stuff that just there's neurons firing, and because of that, consciousness comes as a as an emergent phenomenon. The other way to look at it is that consciousness is what exists, and when consciousness interacts with itself, you see matter as an emergent phenomenon. And these are the different, like Vaisheshika, Advaita, and all of these that they talk about these different kind of views. And recently, there have been some experiments like the Young's double slit experiment, which kind of proves or very strongly suggests that matter is a projection of consciousness. So, for example, in Young's double slit experiment, whether you're observing the particle or not, depends on how it ultimately reacts on the film and on the photographic film. So that means that the particle is actually interacting with your consciousness, and if it's interacting with your consciousness or my consciousness, then it also implies that all consciousness is one. So that is essentially Advaita, right?
Okay, now we'll ask you a simple question, and perhaps a question that everyone who's watching us can also think of in their minds. What is your favorite Sanskrit word?
I think it would be Brahman. So Brahman is, as the source of ultimate reality, is very hard to explain. But if you read the text and everything, you kind of get the gist of it. Otherwise, you have to, like in English, you have to explain what monism is, what the source of everything is. You have to start with Nasadiya Sukta, the whole gamut, right? Whereas with Brahman, it just describes the whole reality to you.
Mr. Yagnadevam, now given that we've just crossed World Sanskrit Day, we're having this conversation, we're talking about everything that Sanskrit brings to the table, what it means for our culture, for our tradition, but how do you look at the future of Sanskrit? Is it just going to be limited to days like this, or there's much more insight for Sanskrit?
Right, so I think the key to any civilization is its cultural memory, and how the civilization sees itself and how the people see themselves belonging to that civilization. And that is carried in your national language and your national lore, and all the things that people have written, in the past for your culture. And India being blessed with one of the oldest written cultures, or like at least in the oral tradition, and then later in the written tradition, one of the earliest works on philosophy, one of the earliest works on grammar, linguistics, and so on. There is so much rich, there's so much depth in the Indian culture, but it's almost all in Sanskrit. Even till like the mid-19th century, scholars were writing in Sanskrit, their papers. And when you give up that language, you are disconnected from your culture. And when you're disconnected from your culture, it's very easy to disrupt your culture. It's very easy to fracture your nation. Okay, because there is no connection to the past. It's not very deep. It's only, you feel the depth only with your family, your immediate ancestors, and so on. But if you had the depth of the whole culture, and you have a lot more things to discuss, you have many common ideas, common ground, that is going to make a nation richer just by that fact. So if you look at the most successful nations, they have a great deep cultural memory. So that is what I think the most important thing is. And maybe in 6 months we will do this interview in Sanskrit, who knows?
Okay, lovely. That's, we're aiming for the sky. So fingers crossed for that. But thank you so much, sir. As you leave us with that food for thought, we'd like to thank you on that note. Now shifting focus to how Instagram has launched new features to improve users' experience and help them connect better on social media platform. In a blog post dated 6th of August this year, Meta noted that the company has launched several new ways to help users better connect with their friends. According to Meta, users can now use options like reposts, the map, and also Friends tab in Reels, which would make it easier and more interesting for friends to stay in touch. CNN News 18's Chandni Mathur gets us more details. Take a look.
Hello friends, let's talk about the biggest buzz in the social media town. Yes, I am talking about the all-new Instagram features. So the app has just recently rolled out some really new cool features that help you connect better with your friends, and I am here to tell you all about them. Remember that super relatable reel that you once shared on your Insta story? Or the one that literally made you rolling on the floor laughing? Well, now you can repost all your favorite reels and post on your profile as well. Yes, and once you repost, they will appear on a separate tab on your profile, so you can go back and check them out again anytime you want. And this is not it. These reposts will also be recommended to your friends and followers. So great opportunity for all the creators out there to expand their reach. Now jumping on the next one, and this is also very interesting. So now you can also choose to share your active location with your friends using the Instagram map. No, don't worry. You will have the option to share your location with only your close friends, selected people, or nobody at all. It's all up to you. If you do switch on the location sharing though, your location will be updated every time you open the app. And hey, you can turn it off anytime you want. Whether or not you choose to share your location, you can always have access to Instagram map to check out the cool locations that your friends are posting from, or to find out a new hanging out place or your next travel destination from a creator's reel. Don't know about you, but I find this super cool. And now the last one, but no less interesting. This new feature will literally let you know what your friends are up to. Yes, Insta now has a separate Friends tab in Reels where you can see the content your friends have engaged with, and you can also join the conversation. So have you tried these new features yet? If yes, which one is your favorite? Do you find them practical enough? Let's begin the conversation now.
Okay, now moving on to the world of auto. Get ready to experience the thrill of the 2025 MG Cyberster Overdrive gets us this in-depth look at this all-electric roadster's performance, design, the several features it brings to the table. Find out if MG Cyberster is worth all the hype in this overdrive review. Take a look.
Of all the cars that you can buy in India, a small roadster under ₹1 crore has been something that's starkly missing. But the new MG Cyberster changes that. Now MG has all the credibility that you might want when it comes to small sports cars. But will this being an EV make it a bit of a compromise? Let's find out. Traditionally, you'd want a winding country road to fully enjoy your MG Roadster. But the Cyberster is packing some serious firepower with its 510 PS and 725 Nm all-wheel drive setup. So the Buddha International Circuit seems good enough to put it through its paces. The weather got a bit tricky by the time we got to driving the Cyberster, so tail wagging was the order of the day. Also, we had some trouble with our audio on the story, so apologies in advance. Nice.
It's because it's raining, right? So
yeah.
Turn the AC on now.
So as you just saw, the MG Cyberster will get its tail out. It's not recommended, don't do it. Don't turn off the AC in the open road because this is a potent car. Now, unlike a traditional small roadster, the Cyberster is nearly 2 tons. MG has worked on creating a stiff chassis and made the battery pack relatively thin at 110 mm. But there's only so much you can hide physics. But the big power figures and low EV mass help hide the MG's weight if you aren't going to be pushing the Cyberster's limits on a racetrack every day. There is 50-50 weight distribution and a rear biased 38-62 torque split. This is impressive considering the MG is packing a large 77 kWh battery pack with 580 km of MIDC range. This also means you will get those traffic light thrills like with other fast EVs. So as you can see, this is the launch control of the MG Cyberster. It's actually surprisingly quick. It'll do 0 to 100 in 3.2 seconds. Let me just show you what it looks like. So I put it in the super sport mode, ESC off, left foot fully on the brake, right foot fully on the accelerator. I get this sort of boost kind of graphic on the dash, and wow. The Cyberster keeps pulling quite hard till about 150 kmph. It does taper off a bit after that, but you will be able to hit 200 kmph easily in this car. The battery pack means that you sit a bit higher off the ground than in an ICE sports car, but a lot of the experience has been recreated here. You get that sports car experience on the move. The Cyberster feels tied down and confident around corners. You can hold good speeds. The car moves around a little bit underneath you, but there's also a good degree of grip on offer with the wide 20-inch wheels. It's agile enough even if the downright balance and agility of a lighter sports car may not be present. You have those bulges at the edges of the bonnet, so that experience is there. And I have to say, for something that is 510 horsepower, this is quite manageable. Of course, you still have to be careful in that sense, but it's very easy to get used to. You might think that with all-wheel drive and with so much power coming through the wheels, it might feel a bit heavy on the nose, but while it's not as darty or as slick as maybe a purely rear-wheel drive sports car might be, this is not bad at all. Considering the pricing, considering where you are, this will probably be a first fast car. In that sense, I think it's very approachable. I also must say about the steering and the brakes. The Brembo 4-piston calipers really come into their own on a racetrack. MG says the Cyberster will go from 100 kmph to a standstill in 33 meters, and it seems like a good claim. There's none of that lightness or distant feel that you get from the regen system in many EVs. The Cyberster is easy to modulate on the brakes and confident even in the wet conditions we drove it in. The steering is predictable and linear. It doesn't have a lot of feedback but has good heft. Now you'll see that when the roof of the Cyberster is tucked away, there's no cover for it, which I think is a bit of a miss. I don't know what will happen when all the water goes through here, but we'll have to figure that out later. But what happens is, even with the roof tucked away, you have a lot of boot space. It's shallow, yes, but a couple of bags, soft bags for two people, I think can be easily done in it, which I think is quite nice. The front doesn't really hold anything, but you also get a small recess behind the seats for small items, so there's enough luggage space in the MG. MG has managed to create the traditional roadster dimensions with the Cyberster and gotten its footprint right. You have the long nose and short rear proportions well executed. The front is smart with the small lights and the simple surfaces. The bodywork too has good creases and curves in the right places, so attention on the road will be easy to come by. But the rear could have been a bit less busy, especially with the nice flat look to it. There is a lot going on with the lighting, which doesn't quite seem to go with the front. Also, the Cyberster font seems to be a bit too similar to the one Porsche uses for its models, for my liking. But you have what is possibly one of the best party tricks of any car at this price in India. Those scissor doors are quite an event and work great most of the time. There's also enough redundancies built in for you to not miss the actual physical door latches. You have 4 buttons to open the doors at various places, including a manual release behind the seats.
Right, so we've broken down all the details. It's up to you how you rate this one. We head into a very quick break with that. We're not done as yet. We'll be right back.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Now, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh on Sunday described India's economy as the world's most dashing and dynamic, adding that some who act like everyone's boss are not happy with India's rise. His remarks come amid high tariff imposed by US President Donald Trump on Indian goods. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also stressed that becoming self-reliant in technology is the country's next big priority. Former Trump aide John Bolton warned that these tariffs risk undoing decades of US efforts to pull India away from Russia and China, calling Trump's apparent bias towards China over India as an enormous mistake. Meanwhile, Shashi Tharoor is leading a parliamentary panel briefing on recent developments in India's foreign policy, focusing on US-India trade negotiations and tariffs. The panel includes Commerce and Foreign Secretaries, along with opposition MPs like Abhishek Banerjee, John Britas, Asaduddin Owaisi and Sagarika Ghosh. An Air India flight from Thiruvananthapuram to Delhi was diverted to Chennai yesterday after crew detected a suspected technical fault amid adverse weather conditions en route. The airline issued a statement confirming that the flight landed safely in Chennai and that the aircraft would undergo necessary checks. Congress leader K.C. Venugopal, who was on board, described the incident as a harrowing journey. In a social media post on X, he thanked the pilot for their quick decision. All right, my colleague Vivek Gupta is with us on the phone line. Vivek, जब से AI 171 की घटना हुई है